Sri Lanka's national sport may be volleyball, but the fact remains, cricket is by far the most popular. Cricket's roots in colonial Ceylon dates back to the 1800s, with an official mention of it in the Colombo Journal on September 5, 1832, calling for the formation of a cricket club. This prompted the creation of the Colombo Cricket Club, CCC. Throughout the 19th century, cricket, although snail-paced, grew in popularity as enthusiasm amongst native Ceylonese increased. The turning point for Ceylonese cricket was perhaps the formation of a national governing body, which came into being in July 1922 as the Ceylon Cricket Association, CCA. The new board was spearheaded by Dr. John Rockwood of Ceylon Medical Corps, who served as president of CCA. Ceylon's first official overseas tour was against India in 1932, and in March 1945, India's national side flew in for an international game at Pisara Stadium, Colombo. Through the 1960s, Ceylon scored several wins against neighbours Pakistan and India, raising the hopes of an England tour in 1968. However, the tour never materialised, owing to a number of factors, the primary being the lack of funds. In 1972, with Ceylon officially changing to Sri Lanka, the national side was performing well at international level. Their capabilities during the tour of Pakistan between 1973-74 prompted the president of Pakistan's cricket board to appeal to the ICC on the possibility of test status for Sri Lanka. By the year 1975, the Board of Control for Cricket in Sri Lanka under the Ministry of Sports was formed, with Sai Senanayake Raja as president. And in the same year, the inaugural Men's Cricket World Cup was held in England. This was Sri Lanka's first major appearance on the world stage. The 1980s brought the encouraging news of the ICC's willingness to award Sri Lanka full member status, which came into effect by July 1981. Late Minister Gamini Dissanayake played a pivotal role in its success, ably supported by Sri Lankan business magnate the late Kili Rajamahendran, chairman of the Maharaja Organisation. Sri Lanka's maiden test match was played in February 1982 against England at the Pisara Stadium, Colombo. In 1982, an international boycott of apartheid South Africa was still firmly in place. Sri Lanka's celebrations of the newly awarded test status was about to come to a grinding halt when several Lankan players accepted an invitation to participate in the infamous Rebel Tour of South Africa. The incident resulted in a 25-year ban on 14 talented cricketers, part of Sri Lanka's promising side. The years that followed produced a number of Sri Lankan stars such as Roy Dias, Siddharth Vettamuni, Ranjan Madugalla, Aravinda de Silva, and a young rising leader, Arjuna Ranatunga. In July 1985, 3 years after their first ever test match, Sri Lanka defeated Kapil Dev's formidable Indian side on home soil, sealing their maiden test win. Across the island, cricket was increasingly growing in popularity, and the 1990s were never short of talent. A young Sanath Jayasuriya was beginning to make an impression. The year 1992 introduced future stars, 20-year-old Muthaiya Muralidharan and the explosive Romesh Kaluwitharana to the world. Successful tours of Pakistan and New Zealand had added an overwhelming level of confidence to the Sri Lankan side by mid-1995. And their easy win in the Singer Cup final over the West Indies that October cemented their reputation as a force to be reckoned with. The Australia Tour kicked off in December 1995, with Sri Lanka winning their very first game, beating the West Indies by 4 wickets. The new opening pair, Jayasurya and Kalavitarna, was setting the tone for a new brand of one-day cricket. However, the excitement was short-lived. During the second test in Melbourne, Sri Lanka's ace spinner, Muthaiya Muralidharan, was called for throwing by Aussie umpire Darrell Hare. Sri Lanka's Australia tour, marred by a slew of unpleasant incidents, ended with a disappointed Lankan camp. The team returned to the island, with Ranatunga openly challenging the Aussies to face them in the 1996 World Cup final. The island's long-drawn civil war had reached a dangerous level at this stage. A terrorist attack on the central bank earlier in January had resulted in the West Indies and Australia's refusal to play in Sri Lanka, one of the World Cup's host nations. Awarded 2 points from Australia and West Indies, Arjuna's team opened their account with an easy win against Zimbabwe in Colombo, their first game in the World Cup. Muthaiya Muralidharan, cleared by the ICC, returned to the side. What followed in the weeks ahead was akin to a fairy tale. Sri Lanka demolished every single opponent in the 1996 World Cup, securing a place in the finals. Arjuna Ranatunga delivered his promise that night in Lahore. Sri Lanka beat Australia to clinch the most